make a couple of announcements to write on your calendars. On Tuesday, April 14th, you are all invited and hope that you will help to get information out. If you haven't already, pick up a flyer for the Environmental Justice Workshop that will be held here in Imperial County, English and Spanish. Please take these with you. We want to make sure that information gets out to the community. We have more flyers in the back, so if you don't have this information yet to take with you, be sure to pick that up. Also, for any of you interested in joining some colleagues, meeting some groups from Latin America, we also have some colleagues here from LA organizing a conference in Monterrey, Mexico. So if any of you are interested in participating in an American exchange and dialogue, including colleagues from various countries like Cuba and Venezuela and a few other places. We also have information. Naomi has flyers that you can get information from her. If you're interested in attending that conference or co-sponsoring it, looking at issues of social justice in the Americas, very important event coming up. All right, and I also wanted to take just a minute before we invite one of our keynote speakers to come up to the podium. I wanted to take a minute to acknowledge a very important person and one of the individuals behind the organizing of this work, this advocacy effort here in the Valley. So if you could all just help me give a big applause to Mr. Velez for Señor Velez is one of the founders of Comité Cívico del Valle and one of the visionaries here in Imperial County who for 20 years has been dedicated to advocating for justice and equity here in this community. He's been instrumental in organizing the Comité Cívico del Valle and continues to be very involved. So just wanted to thank him for all his work. And that I know the after lunch sessions are always a little bit difficult because you might get sleepy and need to move around. So make sure that you raise your hand if you need coffee. This is a really important session that we're getting into. We will begin the afternoon by inviting a very important colleague to come up and share some words of wisdom. The reason that Dr. Devin Peña is here with us from the University of Washington and from Aztlán, this whole southwestern part of the U.S. has been traveling around. Dr. Peña has been very involved in work around environmental justice for many years and is one of the pioneers in creating awareness on the issues that Latinos have faced here in the United States. His work is very important and has really been groundbreaking in the United States and abroad. We have invited him because we think that he can bring a very important perspective to the effort that all of you are leading here in the county. Dr. Peña will be able to give us a context of what is happening abroad and nationally, and how we can begin to build a broader movement linking the work of Imperial County with broader networks that are going on around environmental justice and equity. So it's a real honor. It's really an honor to have Dr. Peña with us today, and I'm going to ask him to come up. I don't want to take any more of his time. So please, round of applause.
Primeramente, le quiero dar las gracias a los organizadores felicidades por esta invitación. A ver si puedo arreglar esto. Especialmente a mis colegas Council San Marcos for the National Latino Policy Research Institute and los colegas con el Comité Cívico del Valle. Les agradezco mucho esta oportunidad para estar aquí con ustedes. The roots of the environmental justice movement in Latina communities run very deep. Some of you may be from Sonora or Sinaloa, so you will know what I'm talking about. In a lot of ways, the birth of our environmental justice movement in Mexican origin communities, at any rate, began with the mine workers' strike at Cananea in 1907. That's when it began. It didn't really start in the 80s like we usually are told. The workers at Cananea, como los obreros at Rio Blanco, and other struggles during the Porfiriato that were precursors to the Mexican Revolution, were demanding an end to the Compañía de Raya, the company store, which kept them in indentured servitude. They were also asking for wage equality because that mining company, like all of the others in Mexico and across the Southwest, at the time had two wages, the Anglo wage and the Mexican wage. And of course, under the Mexican wage, workers who were Mexican were paid less than half as much as Anglos for the same job. They were also, of course, demanding the right to organize, to form unions, and to negotiate collective bargaining agreements. What is interesting is that labor historians that recount this very important struggle often overlook that the Cananea workers were also demanding changes in the safety procedures at the mine to reduce deaths and injuries from the accidents caused by hazardous working conditions. Indeed, the workers at Cananea were among the first to introduce the use of canary birds in cages as a way of detecting and preventing harm from the gases that build up in the mines. So the huelguistas at Cananea were among the first industrial workers in all of North America to link demands for labor rights with demands for social justice and environmental protection. Now, fast forward to the 1960s, when Dolores Huerta and Cesar Chavez organized the first anti-pesticides campaign of the United Farm Workers of America, then known as the United Farm Worker Organizing Committee. When Huerta and Chavez sought to organize farm workers, the issues they fought for were not just the rights of union recognition and a living wage. They, too, pioneered the struggle for environmental justice and to end environmental racism and the unjust poisoning of our families and communities. So in a very real sense, the struggle for environmental justice has been with us for a very long time, and as long as our people have fought to protect themselves from risks and hazards in the places where we live, work, play, and pray. We just didn't call it environmental justice. The term environmental justice actually came into use only back in the 1980s when it was first used by Benjamin Chavis and other African American activists to describe the struggle to end environmental racism. Now, environmental racism is an important concept because it is based on empirical studies that document the inequalities facing people of color and low-income communities who suffer disproportionate exposure to health risks from pollution and workplace hazards. This is what we call el racismo tóxico, toxic racism. Although I would think all racism is toxic, no? However, environmental racism is not just about inequalities in the distribution of environmental risks. This is a common mistake made by our own activists. It also refers to the exclusion of people of color from participation in the planning and decision-making agencies and processes that govern environmental protection and regulation. We are the most polluted, but also the most excluded.